So Steve Bannon, I hand the podium over to you.
Thank you. I want to thank the people of Toronto, the Munk family, for hosting this, having me tonight, and for the men and women outside who are exercising their freedom of speech rights to protest. It's not a question of whether populism is on the rise and populism is going to be the political future. The only question before us is it going to be populist nationalism or populist socialism? To understand the velocity, the intensity, the depth of the populist revolt on a global basis, we have to go back to the beginning, what Hollywood would call the inciting incident. I want to take you back to September 18th, 2008, Washington, D.C., the Oval Office. I think it's 10 or 11 o'clock in the morning. President Bush, David's...
We respect your right to free speech, but we have, if I'm correct, audience, we have 2,800 people who want this debate to go on. So can I have a round of applause, please, for this debate to proceed? Thank you. Let's have a loud round of applause. Thank this woman for her free speech rights. We appreciate that. Thank you very much. Okay, so if I have your attention on the stage, we're going to follow a policy tonight. This person has been cautioned. If she does not stop, she will unfortunately be asked to leave this debate. So, Madame, it is your decision. You can stay or you can go. What are we going to do? Okay, no, sorry. You're still engaging. Officers, we're going to move forward with our plan. If we can please remove the person from the hall. Thank you very much. A big round of applause for the Toronto Police Services this evening. Fabulous job. Okay, Stephen, you've got the floor again.
Thank you.
We're going to give you an extra minute on the clock.
No.
No?
I'll play by the rules. We're in the Oval Office. Secretary, or head of the Federal Reserve, Bernanke, Hank Paulson, Secretary of the Treasury, walk in, tell the President of the United States, by 5 o'clock this afternoon, by close of business, we need $1 trillion cash infusion into the American financial system. If we don't get it, the American financial system will implode in 72 hours, the world financial system 3 days after that, and we will have global anarchy and chaos. The greatest enemies of the United States, Mussolini, Hitler, Tojo, the Soviet Union, Al-Qaeda, Osama bin Laden. Nobody's ever brought the United States to its knees like that day. Who did that? Who's responsible for that? The populist? Donald Trump? No, the elites. The financial, the corporate, the permanent political class that runs Washington, D.C., that's who did it. What was their solution? To create money and bail themselves out. On the day that happened, the balance sheet of the Federal Reserve was $880 billion. When Donald Trump took the oath of office, January 20th, 2017, it was $4.5 trillion. We flooded the zone with liquidity, just like the Bank of Tokyo, the Bank of England, the European Central Bank. The party at Davos, the elites, bailed themselves out, afraid of some sort of deflationary death spiral. That's not a free bailout. There's a corollary to that. Savings accounts are zero. Pension funds have the biggest gap in history. You can't underwrite a bond in the United States because you only get, for a public school or waterworks, you get 2%. The little guy would bear the burden of that. If you've owned assets, intellectual property, stocks, real estate, hedge fund, name it, in the last 10 years, you had the greatest run in history. For everybody else, a disaster. 50% of American families can't put $400 of cash on their hands on cash, right? I hate the elite, you gotta lay that down there. 60% of our jobs are subsistence jobs. It wasn't Donald Trump, it wasn't the populist. The populist movement, the nationalist movement, is not a cause of that, it's a product of that. Donald Trump's presidency is not a cause of that, it's a product of that. When I stepped into the campaign in mid-August, the central number is not how far he's behind, is that 70% of the American people believe for the first time in our history that the country was in decline and the elites were okay with that. That managed decline was the wave of the future. Whether it's in education, the southern border, China, Korea, Iran, our education, our health system. It was Donald Trump that turned that around. It's the party. This is a very tough crowd. We'll have plenty of time to go through this. The party at Davos, the scientific, managerial, engineering, financial, cultural elite that run the world, have left a financial wasteland and decoupled from the middle class and the working class throughout the world. That is why Salvini and Orban and Brexit and now Bolsonaro, it shouldn't be lost on you the day Captain Bolsonaro is elected is the day Angela Merkel will leave the stage. Trump's economic nationalism doesn't care about your race, your religion, your ethnicity, your color. Okay. I got a whole night to convert you. I saw the 28%. It doesn't. Doesn't matter your gender, doesn't matter your sexual preference. It matters. I said economic nationalism. Work with me. It cares if you're a citizen. Look at the results. Look at the results today. Lowest black unemployment in history, lowest Hispanic unemployment in 30 years. Wages rising across the board. Manufacturing jobs coming back. The populist nationalist message and its policies are working in the United States, and it's spreading. The revolt in Europe and now in Latin America. And I get contacted every day from Asia, from Africa, from the Middle East. We're at the beginning of a new political revolution, and that is populism. The only question before us, is it going to be a populist nationalism that believes in capitalism and deconstructing the administrative state and giving the little guy a piece of the action and break up this crony capitalism of big corporations and big government? Or is it going to be a Jeremy Corbyn and Bernie Sanders type of populist socialism? Because the party at Davos and the elites have blown too many calls. Too many existential events. The rise of China, the $7 trillion spent on the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan, the deregulation that led to the financial crisis in 2008, how the financial crisis was bailed out, where we are today in this over-leveraged society. Because as you know, most of you in this room that work in finance, we're heading to another financial crisis. That is the question before us. What form of populism? And I hope tonight that the good people in Toronto will listen with open ears as we debate this topic. Thank you very much. You know, this is the oldest trick in the book. Just smear the populist movement. You know, smear the deplorables. Hillary Clinton tried that. We saw how it turned out. David, the reason that Donald Trump and the populist movement rose is because of the administration you worked in, right? You keep talking about the ability to make these decisions and, how great a decision you're making, all these scumbags and thieves that are in the populist movement. The reason you don't like it today is liberal democracy, and people, the concept of the economists is illiberal democracy. The reason you call it that is because Orban is winning with 70% of the vote. Di Maio and Salvini are winning with 2/3 of the vote. Captain Bolsonaro wins with 55% of the vote. Donald Trump wins with over 300 electoral votes. Tough. In the watch of President Bush, we saw the inexorable rise of China and was told there was the second law of thermodynamics, right? They were going to become a liberal democracy and a free market capitalist. And we watched the beginning process of the deindustrialization of the United States, shipping all the manufacturing jobs over there. If you read J.D. Vance's Hillbilly Elegies, the great sociological study of the deplorables, it shows you a direct correlation between the factories that left, the jobs that went with it, and the opioid crisis. They took away people's self-worth and dignity. The second was the great decisions and the $7 trillion. That's Brown University, Watson Center. That's not Breitbart. That's their analysis of what it costs on these wars that we still haven't won and are still in 17 years later. 10,000 dead, 40 or 50,000 combat casualties, and $7 trillion spent. And the last is the financial debacle on their watch. It's pretty easy to sit here with all these highfalutin terms and how racist. The populist movement is not racist. Look at the economic benefits that are coming through President Trump's policy. And if you believe for a second his thing about Obama, he didn't understand the math between $880 billion and $4.5 trillion. It's pretty easy to create things when you're flooding the zone with capital and destroying the basics of the Judeo-Christian West family, which is saving. You cannot save anymore. You don't have a pension plan. That is all the work of the great elites of the permanent political class that look at the populist movement as a bunch of racist, nativist xenophobes. Well, it's not. It's the backbone. They're the backbone of our country, the most decent people on earth. Here in Canada, you're built upon the same building blocks of the little guy, the little person. What do you call it? For the common good? David Frum needs no introduction. He's one of the most significant public intellectuals in the United States, and particularly the conservative movement. And yes, I reached out to him when I made a film about the financial crisis because I needed his intelligence, I needed his perspective, I needed his wisdom. It's a very high priority for me and others in the populist movement to convert people like David Frum to our cause. We're not trying to stop elections. We're going to win elections. We love elections because we're going to win. Victory begets victory. We're not saying don't have elections. We're the true anti-fascists. Fascism looks to worship the state. The Trump movement has three things: economic nationalism, American first national security policy, and deconstruction of the administrative state. The progressives over the last 40 or 50 years have built up an administrative state bigger than the cabinet departments we have. It's something the founders never, it's a fourth branch of government. Trump's entire program, it's why Gorsuch and Kavanaugh are in the Supreme Court. The Chevron exemption, they're all about deconstructing. It's not deregulation, it's taking the Leviathan apart brick by brick, which David Frum has argued for 30 years of his professional life. Economic nationalism is putting your country first when it comes to the economy, and to not have the maximization of shareholder value, but have the maximization of citizenship value. If the Trump program and the populists are so bad, David, how do we get the new NAFTA deal? And the key to the NAFTA deal I forgot I'm in Toronto. It's to create a geostrategic manufacturing base that will counter East Asia and not allow Mexico to China to game the system through Mexico. The benefits of this, as you see the supply chains, you see the EU and Japan and Korea have bilateral deals with us, are going to be